So one of the most important challenges in the coming 50 years would be to see how well can we create a situation of access to the benefits of the space to nearly all the nations of the world and to the various communities and even communities within the nations. And of course, I don't have to emphasize the importance that the space has come to enjoy because of the type of support that it has provided to the humankind in terms of several developmental issues related to weather, related to satellite communication and positioning systems, Earth observations for timely, precise and accurate information, as well as environment and climatic research, enabling ICT applications. In fact, the concept of the global village came really with the era of space, and ultimately, of course, using the same systems to have information dissemination, health, and education. These are all the potential that has been opened up with ICT, information communication technologies using space systems. And of course, space has also become a commercial enterprise with total turnovers which are more than $100 billion per year, and maybe something like 300,000 people today who are employed directly in this major thing. And ultimately, the space has provided a means of looking at the Earth as a total system, the interactive, complex system of biological, chemical, and physical components. Now, in trying to look at all these, what has happened in the last 50 years, it's good to know the benefits to the mankind when we talk of, instead of trying to go through the whole thing. I'll just look at the way the space has been used. In fact, Roy mentioned about it in his talk. In our own country, in trying to address the various kinds of needs in terms of development of the country and the type of benefit that it can take you to the grassroots level. Natural resources has been one of the major things. India has developed a fleet of remote sensing satellites, about 8 or 9, which provides a variety of information with regard to the Earth resources, and today we use them routinely in the context of agriculture and soil information, prediction and so on, forest and environmental mensuration and evaluation, the water bodies and evaluating the water availability, questions of land use and land optimization, weather and climatic systems, ocean, and related particularly with respect to the biological productivity and looking at fisheries and so on, and also the space system, we use it for disaster support. So there is a whole gamut of things where the remote sensing satellites are used. Similarly, the communication has really opened up a new era in terms of the connectivity between the different parts of the country. On one side, the broadcasting capability of the system today provides a unique ability to have an outreach which is almost about 70 to 75% of the total 1 billion population. And on the other side, you have an outreach which can cover almost 90% of the country. And on the communication, certainly it has provided connectivity to very remote parts of the country where no other kind of communication existed until that went to the space era. Meteorological system provide not only the weather information related to the local requirements, but also with respect to the region. And we also use these communications with respect to developmental area. Two specific things with respect to communication, which is, I think, which needs a direction in the coming years, is one, which is the use of systems for telemedicine, the ability to provide the best of the medical services to different parts of the world from places where you have the specialist doctors. And this has been very successfully, but on a limited scale, tried out in India, but this needs a tremendous attention among the space community. The other side, of course, is the tele-education. Again, the lack of quality education opportunities in many parts of the world and the ability of the space system to provide connectivity between places where you have the best of the teachers and best of the other kinds of teaching aids, and to places where you don't have this, how do you bring in even the concept of virtual classes and so on? This is another type of thing. But still, in spite of doing all these, it's also clear to us that there is again large parts of our own country which needs to have the benefit of the space. So this is another kind of a challenge. Now, where does all this kind of a thing lead to in terms of the challenge ahead? Two important things are currently taking place on this planet Earth. One is, everybody talks about the global change, and the second is the population explosion, which is supposed to go to 9.2 billion by 2050. Now what is it? It's going to impact the quality of life of the humankind. So the questions are related to the environmental changes, questions related to the food security, water security, enhanced natural disasters, which natural disasters increase frequency and intensity, and of course social and health security. So here is a solution which has been developed over the last 50 years with respect to the benefits of that it can give. And most of the problems that one is addressing or one is concerned about, the environmental, food security and so on, has embedded in it experiences that the space has provided to the humankind as to how to create the necessary information base and decision support. So it is in this connection, it is almost connecting in a seamless fashion into the next 50 years in terms of an ability to provide services which ultimately is sorely needed as the planet faces the challenge of increasing population as well as the global change. And here is where the space can play a very central role on a system approach in the context of looking at the resulting challenges. Now what are these challenges with respect to which we are talking about? The environmental issues, the next 50 years, you can look at many of the parameters of the components of the environmental system that one is worried about: atmosphere, the bioresources, the forestry depletion, the snow and the glaciers melting, the ocean surface rise, the sea level rise, and physical resources like the land and the water and so on. So one can see that there is a gamut of issues that is being thrown up currently with respect to the various parameters of the environmental system. Now what is it that one can do with the space in this context based on all that we have done so far in addressing these kind of issues? There are gaps with respect to what we have done so far, even though we have demonstrated the capability of the system by specific experiments. There are gaps in observation, there are gaps in measurement, monitor, modeling, implementation and so on. So obviously we have to migrate to a new generation of systems which will address the questions of environment and what Roy mentioned about the GEOS, the system of systems for global Earth observation, is one such step which is extremely important in the context of the next 50 years. And then of course there are other auxiliary systems which can be used for making those measurements. And then one has to also have international cooperation when you talk of environment with respect to several ground measurements that one has to do. Questions of modeling, questions which are related to data fusion and the things of that kind. So this is a whole gamut of things that need to be evolved around a set of Earth observation satellites which will specifically address the questions of the environment. So ultimately, what we call here as a space web, what it will do is, one, it will provide the information, the requisite periodicity, accuracy, scale on all important environmental parameters. In fact, something like 182 parameters in the GEOS system is being thought about. The second is the modeling leading to specific predictions at the local level, regional level, and the global level, and ultimately contributing to the international treaties, conventions, and agreements. So this is where the environmental system of the future, one should look at it, and the type of global system that one can establish, taking of course the advantage of the type of experience we have gained over the last 50 years.